It would be fair to say that despite their sales success, SUVs aren't everyone's cup of tea, certainly not when it comes from a social responsibility type of point of view. Now, if you're a manufacturer that sells SUVs, they tend to have other cars within their range to sort of like counter that. BMW, Audi, Mercedes, for instance, they don't just sell SUVs. Okay, they're big sellers within the range, but for those customers who don't want to be seen driving an SUV because of that sort of like visual sort of like identification being associated with SUVs, that's all right because they've got other cars within the range for them to buy. But what if you're a manufacturer that only sold SUVs? That's all you produced was off-roaders. Now, Land Rover's a prime example, but dare I suggest there's a certain sort of like arrogant cachet with the beloved green oval where the customers don't really mind in some respects. But there is another that might have a little bit more of a problem, and it's Jeep. Now, this is a Jeep Grand Cherokee, but more to the point, it's my Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I absolutely love it. I've owned more than one of these. I think they're absolutely fantastic cars. I love the fact that they're big and they're big and comfortable. I can get all my stuff in the back, I can get my dog in it, I can get my bikes in the back, I can get the roof box on it. I go down to Cornwall in it, and I drive up to Scotland in it, and of course it's got that legendary off-road capability the times when I do actually need it. But what if I came across all a little bit, shall we say, responsible for once? What can Jeep do to keep me as a customer if I came across all sort of like with a bit of a kind of social conscience, dare we suggest? Well, they can now offer me this, which is the new Jeep Avenger, and it's the brand's first all-electric car in their 80-year history. But is it a proper Jeep? Welcome to this week's road test review, welcome to the new Jeep Avenger, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get started on this week's road test review of Jeep's new Avenger, it is of course that time where I ask you to make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below so that you can be notified when our next video is uploaded and goes live. Once you've watched the video, if you do enjoy it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget, leave us your comments down below. Let us know your thoughts on the cars we review, such as Jeep's new Avenger, and of course on the AutoEV channel as a whole. Now, there's been smaller Jeeps before, obviously, than my Grand Cherokee. I mean, for instance, there's the Renegade, the Compass, the Patriot, and of course there was the original Cherokee, the Cherokee itself. That was a smaller car as well. But the Avenger is really small, and I mean really small. Now, obviously Jeep's part of Stellantis Group, which encompasses the artists formerly known as PSA and Fiat as well, and of course there's a lot of component sharing goes on, and the Avenger sits on their new ECMP2 platform, which also going to underpin cars such as the Vauxhall Mokka and Peugeot's new E2008. But get your head around this. This is 20 centimetres shorter than a Peugeot E2008. In other words, it has the same footprint as a B-segment Super Mini, like a Vauxhall Corsa or a Volkswagen Polo. So this is a really small Jeep. And if you thought that was radical, get your laughing gear around this. To begin with, it's front-wheel drive only. But before we move on, let's take a look at the main points about the new Jeep Avenger. Now, as I said, it sits on Stellantis Group's new ECMP2 platform, but 60% of the components used are unique to Jeep. It's a compact crossover style car that will sit below the brand's current Renegade model. At launch, it only comes with a single front mounted motor capable of delivering a power output of 156 brake horsepower. It has a usable battery capacity of 51 kilowatt hours, allowing a WLTP range of up to 249 miles. And initially there will be 3 trim levels offered in the UK, with prices ranging from £35,700 and going up to £39,600. Now, the Avenger, since it's been launched, has already won numerous accolades and awards, including the 2023 European Car of the Year award. But does that make it a proper Jeep? Well, the only way to find out was by handing the keys over to an actual Jeep owner, and someone who's capable of putting it through the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car. And that is me and the AutoEV road test. Now, I'm going to start with styling, because styling's important, because it has to be recognisable as a Jeep. Now, most car manufacturers have some kind of styling cue, if you like, that makes them instantly recognisable as being from that brand. And if you think about it, it's usually the grille. Of course, BMW have the double kidney grille, Rolls-Royce the big Pantheon grille, and of course Mercedes-Benz the three-pointed star that usually sits atop a grille. Jeep have one as well, and it's the 7-slot grille. It's been there ever since the Willys Jeep, and it's all through their other models: Compass, Renegade, Wrangler, of course my Grand Cherokee, and it's here on the Avenger. You can see it, 7-slot grille, except it's not a grille because it doesn't need to be, but they're still there, the 7 vertical kind of blocks, if you like, where a grille would normally be. And because you're being able to personalise and customise the Jeep, something that's very important to Jeep customers, you'll be able to get different little kind of graphics to put in there, which I think is quite cool. But we'll talk a little bit about that later when we're talking about specs and prices. Cooling's done down at the bottom, and that's obviously here, which is just in this lower section grille. And you'll also notice there's a few little sort of like Easter eggs, as they call them, round, and again, little design touches, like for instance the little Jeep grille with headlights down in there, and of course you'll see those around the car as well, because they're also on various different parts, so even such as the alloy wheels on this particular car. Now, the other thing about the Jeep is this: they're talking a huge amount about the protection that the Avenger has around it. You'll notice you've got this black plastic cladding, and that's all around the car, 360 degrees around the car, and that's going to aid with sort of like making sure you've got no real kind of parking dings or scratches to the actual paintwork. The other thing that's important as well is the front wings. They sit a lot prouder. Now, they actually sit further out, so the wheels are slightly proud of the actual bodywork itself in terms of where the panel work is. And that is a styling clue that comes right back from the Wrangler and obviously its predecessors as well. So there's a lot of Jeep DNA in here, but what's interesting is they've managed to do a very, very modern style while still evoking that DNA without being retro. And certainly the start of this styling section, I think they're off to a winner with this car. So when you move around the side, you realise how compact the Avenger really is. As I say, it's 4 metres long, that's it, which gives it the footprint of a Volkswagen Polo. But look how far apart the wheels are. Look at the length of the wheelbase and sort of like how far out to the extremities they've pushed it. Now, that's to do with off-road ability as well as increasing the cabin space. Now, I know I said right at the beginning, most people don't off-road their SUVs, and of course I also said this is a front-wheel drive only car, but it wears a Jeep badge, so you have to be capable of some off-roading at the very least. Which means how they've worked this design in is to do with the off-roading. So in other words, your approach angle is 20%, your breakover angle is 20%, and your departure angle at the back is 34%. That's incredible. It sits 200 millimetres high and it has a wading depth of 230 millimetres. That's exceptional for this type of car, and it should be more than enough, as I say, than most people, certainly I would ever need when I take my Jeep off-road. Now, wheel sizes, they start at 16 inches. There's 3 trim levels available in the UK to begin with, and the bottom trim will start with 16-inch wheels. You'll then move up through the middle trim with 17s, and this top of the range Summit with 18-inch alloy wheels as well. But even again, 18-inch wheels in this day and age isn't a particularly large alloy wheel, but again, in a small car like this, it really, really works. And of course, you've got that kind of trapezoidal kind of wheel arch that Jeeps have always been renowned for as well, which is designed to allow a huge amount of underbody protection as well, and a maximum amount of compression should the wheel be into a rut or going over a breakover angle, as I say. This body cladding down the side, again, you know, it's designed to help protect the bodywork, and again, it's practical. They've really, really put a lot of thought into the car, and you get lots of little Easter eggs, as I say. You get your Jeep branding at the back there. As I said, you've got your little kind of 7-slot grille on the alloy wheel. There's even little bits and pieces all around the car that you can just kind of see, which we'll show you a bit later on in the interior of the vehicle. But again, it's designed to be fun because it's designed to sort of like appeal to a much younger audience than maybe Jeep has done in the past. Now, as you move around the back of the car, you can see again a lot of the Jeep kind of DNA, as I was talking about earlier. You've got this kind of floating C-pillar, as they call it, which is evident on the new Compass model and the new Grand Cherokee, which is just about to launch in the UK. These rear lights are very clever as well. They've got quite a big kind of sort of like lens to them. The light's really inset. Again, designed to be very, very practical, you know, to avoid them getting sort of like hit by bushes or such like if you do wander off the beaten track. And the lights themselves follow this new X signature, which was first shown on the Renegade, which was a styling cue that was taken from the petrol can, the jerry can, that was mounted on the back of the Willys Jeep. So if you have a look at one of those, they've got a kind of X embossed in them. That's why they use that. Now again, as I keep saying, this body cladding all round here, and this skid plate is actually moulded in colour as well, so it's not painted. So if it does get scraped, it's not paintwork that's getting scraped, it's just the plastic. And there's a really wide opening hatchback as well to the car to aid that practicality. Of course, at the top you get your big roof spoiler with your integrated high level brake lamp in it, rear wiper, thank you very much Jeep, and just your little E badge there for your electric. So in terms of styling, what do I think? Well, I think this is a fabulous looking car, and it looks to me like a proper Jeep, and a huge amount of thought has gone into it, and the design is supposed to evoke, as I say, Jeep's heritage, but still appeal to sort of like a young and fun audience that might be new to the brand. I think it's an absolute winner, but what do you think? As always, let me know in the comments down below. So, is it going to work as a practical car? Well, again, small, B-sector SUV, 355 litres of boot space is on offer, which is okay, not massive, but more than enough, I would think, for most people. Of course, you get a standard 60-40 split rear seat, so when you fold the seats down, that will extend up to 1,053 litres, so that's pretty decent. You've also got sort of like this enough underfloor storage for sort of like cables as well, so there's enough space in there. I'm going to talk about practicality again, because in terms of it's sort of like the way that Jeep see customers using the car, they've really thought about. So instead of this being sort of like painted and this being a nice sort of like kind of chrome finish, it's not, it's real scuffable plastic. So if you were loading, so like, I don't know, if you're putting, like, say, a mountain bike in there or something, you know, the pedals hitting the back bumper and things, it's not going to make a mark on the expensive paintwork. It's just tough plastic. Also as well, the entry height as well, there isn't really a drop at all. It is a flat load entry into there. So again, if you're loading, I didn't bring my suitcases with me because I'm on the UK launch, and they get a bit weird when I turn up with suitcases. They think I'm moving in for the week, so I don't have them. But as I say, if you're loading a big kind of heavy suitcase in there, you don't have a huge sill to lift it up to, despite sort of like the raised ground clearance of the Jeep, because I say it sits 200 millimetres high. But you're not dropping it down into the boot well as either. It's a relatively flat entry. What else have you got? We've got a couple of little kind of hooks at the side there. There's no lashing points though. That's a little bit of a shame. There's no kind of lashing points for sort of, you know, putting like a luggage net down there to keep it down. Security wise, you obviously get your rigid parcel shelf there, and the powered tailgate is going to be on some models with also sort of like that kind of kick ability. You know, you swipe your foot underneath it to open it up. So again, you know, if you've got your hands full of shopping, or you're bringing your kit back from whatever outdoors pursuits you've been doing, you just swipe your foot underneath it and up it goes. So yeah, good practical car, I think. So as I say, it is quite a compact car. So how does it fare in the back? Well, that's my driving position, and everyone knows I'm kind of 5'7", 5'8". Yeah, it's all right. It's okay. Well, let's not kid anybody on here. It's not going to have the carrying capacity inside of my Grand Cherokee. But I could sit behind myself for a reasonably long journey. There's not really a huge amount of problem here. If you're closer to 6 foot, however, you're going to have an issue in terms of leg space. There's enough under seat room for my feet, which is good. However, you do have a raised tunnel here. Now, this is quite interesting because whilst it sits on the ECMP2 platform, Jeep weren't going to offer this car with an internal combustion engine, but the rumours are that they are going to, just to capitalise on the market. Now, it's the B segment SUV market, which is quite a big marketplace, especially in Europe. In fact, 1 in 5 cars sold in Europe is this style of car. So maybe by like just limiting it to electric only models, Jeep feels that it might miss out on a few sales, and of course they're trying to grow the brand a huge amount in Europe. And importantly, this is a Jeep that was designed in Europe and engineered in Europe, and it's built in Europe. They're not offering this car in the US at all. The USA does not get the Avenger. So, interesting. But that is a little bit disappointing, in fairness. I kind of feel that, you know, in some ways manufacturers maybe need to be a little bit more brave and just go, well, you know what, we've said it's electric only and that's what we're going to offer, that's it. But they haven't. Anyway, there we go, that's enough. USB-C connectivity there. Just the one port, however. Again, it maybe could have done with two. But you do have sort of like storage in the backs of the seats. Now, you don't have a fold-down armrest, which is a little bit of a shame. And also, there's no door bins in the back as well. So, you know, as I say, we use our car for going to sort of like Cornwall all the time. And my daughter has a flip-down armrest. She keeps her water bottle in. So there's not even a door bin for it to slot in. So that's kind of disappointing, I have to suggest. Isofix points, they're behind these zips, as you tend to find with the Stellantis group cars, and you pull the material apart and jab your thing through there. It's not ideal, but the counter is you do get another Isofix point on the front passenger seat. So as I say, I appreciate it's a small B segment SUV, and it's never going to be, as I say, big and commodious. However, it's one downside to the car I've found. The rear accommodation, whilst okay, doesn't offer the little bits and pieces that maybe sort of like a young family might look for. As I say, some storage for the kids, just the one power socket there as well is a little bit disappointing. So I have to say, from that point of view, maybe not so good. Now, one of the biggest faults in the rear of the car is one of the big plus points in the front of the car, and that is storage. There is a huge amount of storage in here, which is great as a family car, which makes it even more frustrating that it doesn't have it in the rear. However, if you think about it, a B segment on a super mini small SUV has around about 14-15 litres of storage space normally. The Jeep Avenger has roughly 34 litres up here. That's huge, absolutely huge. Now, let me run you through kind of the design and sort of like, you know, the bits and pieces of this. So it's designed, again, a bit like the outside, a lot of sort of like evoking heritage and DNA, like with the Wrangler, this kind of horizontal kind of bar, as you can see across the face here, which is really nice, gives it that kind of chunky kind of feel to it. Screens mounted in the centre so that all passengers can see. That's the idea behind that. And below the screen, you first of all have this tray, which runs the kind of width from the steering column right out to the side, the passenger side, with this kind of rubberized base to it. Below that, you get a glove box. Well, they say a glove box, it's a kind of half glove box because it's a Stellantis group car, so you'll get a glove in it. But then below that, look, you get this kind of magnetic cover that hides this kind of big storage area here. Now, depending obviously on the model you get, you may get that with a wireless charging pad, but it is optional. I'll talk about trims in a second. But there's also a deep well behind that as well, so you can drop stuff down in there, and then this cover just kind of covers it over. Centre console. You look, you've got this big storage bit in there. I can get my big Yeti flask in there. Other coffee cups are available, and water bottle with the dividers that you can move around. Then behind that, you've also got this centre console cubby where you can drop your Polo Mints down into, which is great. Then they've got door bins in the front. Don't know why they have them in the back, but they've got them in the front, where you've got enough space. You can get extra drinks cans in there and sunglasses and all the paraphernalia that you might need. My wife would love this. I mean, the amount of litter that she's got in that Grand Cherokee of hers, you know, like sunglasses case, bottles of perfume, notepads and pens for when she's scribbling down stuff that she, you know, from work and stuff. This, she'd lose stuff in here. This is phenomenal. It's brilliant. So, as I say, that's a real kind of good plus point for up here. Right, let me talk about the infotainment screen. So this is a 10.25 inch infotainment screen. You do get wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay standard across the range, which is very, very good. You don't get embedded navigation as standard. You've got to pay extra for that, and that's done via TomTom. But there's an argument to say that obviously if you had it, if you're using your Apple CarPlay or your Android Auto, you'd be using Waze or Google Maps or whatever. So I can kind of forgive it on that, because that's what I tend to use when I'm out driving. Even our Grand Cherokee, the Uconnect system in it is hopeless. It's the worst navigation I've used. So I just use Google Maps all the time. So anyway, there we go. That's that. There are some functionalities in here. So, you know, some things like if you've got the heated seats fitted to that particular car, they're in there. There's certain bits and pieces in here that you can go into in terms of obviously your media, your driver assistance systems, you know, your lane keep assist, that type of thing. So there are some things you need the screen for. However, there are physical buttons behind there below it, which I really do like. I think it's very, very clever, the fact they've just added these little physical shortcut buttons. So there's a home button, and obviously to get into your car settings, so they're there. But then the big point is heating and ventilation controls are all physical, and they're there. Now, obviously we're in the UK, and despite the weather we've had this late kind of September, when I'm filming this, you do get colder months here. And the fact is, you might be getting into the car in the morning with a pair of gloves on, and being able to get your heating cranked up or switch on your heated rear screen while still wearing a pair of gloves, you need physical buttons. And I have to say, Jeep, fantastic. I like that. And they're nice and they're chunky and they're easy to use. Well done. Love that. You've got a volume control there as well for the stereo system, as well as your usual one you would get on the steering wheel. So fair play. Transmission selector is along here. Park, reverse, neutral and drive, and then you've got one level of brake regen, which is the B mode. And then back here you've got this drive mode selector. Now there's 6 driving modes on the car. The 3 normal ones you would come to expect, and then 3 more, but we will discuss that when we're out driving it. So that will activate some of those. Right, driving position itself, very, very good. You're faced with this, depending on model, will depend on the size of the driver display that you get. So there's 3 trim levels, as I say. It starts with the longitude, and then you got through the altitude and then the summit. And this particular one I'm in is a summit. Now the altitude and summit get a 10.25 inch driver display, a TFT driver display. The longitude, the lead-in model to the range, that's a 7-inch display, so it doesn't have quite such a big display as you get in the other 2. Even so, it is configurable. You can go through it. You can see there, you can get your navigation in there, your media and whatever's playing on there, and then of course you get your usual kind of trip meter functionality you get through it as well. So there's a configuration available through the actual dashboard itself that you can see on the top 2 trim levels with this bigger display. The display itself is very clear, very crisp. So you get your power meter on the left hand side, you get your big bold state of charge on the right with the range to go down at the bottom there, and then your speed right at the top, dead center. So again, you're not having important information cut off by the steering wheel. You don't have a head-up display, but there's an argument that says maybe you don't need it when it's as big and bold and crisp and right in your line of sight as it is. So maybe that's okay then. The driving position itself is really very good. You've got excellent adjustability. You've got reach and rake adjustment manual on the steering column, and the steering wheel is just the right size and just the right thickness for my liking. And again, it's got the kind of simple 3-spoke design with all the kind of physical buttons that you might need. So obviously on your left hand side you get things like your cruise control and your driver assistance systems, and then on your right hand side you've got volume, media controls, and for your telephone as well. The seats are good. Now they're manually adjustable. I think it's an option to have electric adjustment, which might have been kind of nice, especially on the Summit model. But it doesn't have it, so I can't really complain too much about that. You've got height adjustment, obviously you've got backrest adjustment, and fore and aft. There's just enough length in that squab for me to support the back of my thigh, so that's very good. But there's a really nice amount of lateral support down the side bolsters, so that's very, very good. And then the rest of the controls are kind of grouped over here. So you get your window controls, your mirror controls on the door, and then down by my right knee I've got things like heated front screen, switching alarm off, your headlight levelling, and your hill descent control button. So yes folks, it does have hill descent control, which is a first for a front wheel drive car. There you go. But as I say, we'll talk about the off-roading bits when we're out driving it. Now, quality. It's okay. It's very good. Don't get me wrong, I drive a Jeep. I've had more than one Jeep. I know what they're like. They're not the best, they're all right. There are certain plastics which are harder and kind of scratchier than you'd get on certain other models. I'm under no illusions that my Grand Cherokee is anywhere close to being sort of the same quality materials you would get in a Range Rover, but then it's not the same price as a Range Rover, hence the reason I drive it. But again, it's all right. It's kind of as we've come to expect from Jeep. And again, if you were sort of like a young family, which obviously this is kind of aimed at, you've also got to think that the materials that they've used in here, they're all kind of wipe clean, which is important when you've got young kids in the car. But as I say, there are better cars out there for it. I get that, but the quality of the materials is one thing. The build quality is all right. Now, the car's actually built in Poland, believe it or not. It's built in, I think it's Tycza? I can't remember the name of the place. But anyway, it's built there. You know, where a lot of sort of the manufacturing, sort of like, you know, from Stellantis cars are kind of done over the years. And as I say, it's all right. It's not bad. But I could pick fault with it if I was really here long enough. So, summary, what do I like about it? I love the design of it. I love the practicality of it. It's immense, the amount of storage that you've got in here. I like the fact that the equipment level is good, depending obviously on the model that you go for, but generally speaking, the equipment level on all three cars are very, very good. It's an excellent driving position. It's a very comfortable seat. I could see myself doing a long journey in the car. And as I say, you've got a really nice driver display ahead of you, and the fact you get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard is to be commended. The downsides, well, as I say, you know, there's certain maybe bits of equipment you might have expected on this higher trim level, you know, maybe a panoramic sunroof and electric seats or something like that, which you don't get. And as I say, some of the kind of harder plastics, which you can kind of see around the car, maybe could be a little bit better. But on the whole, I think it's a very good effort, and I'd be very happy to spend a bit of time in here. Now, the Avenger gets the new 54 kilowatt hour battery from the Stellantis group, which has a usable capacity of 51 kilowatt hours. Now, that should see a WLTP range, Jeep say, of up to 249 miles. But they also say that pure urban driving, you could see as much as 300 miles out of the car, such as its efficiency in the urban environment. Looking on something like the EV database, it lists its combined real-world range at around about 215. So I would suggest in general running, I would probably expect to see somewhere between 220 to maybe 230 miles out of the car as a combined sort of use, if you weren't being too silly with it. Now, charging speeds, it will take obviously a CCS charger, and it will take charging speeds of up to 100 kilowatts, and Jeep say you can go from 20 to 80% in just 24 minutes. Now, if you're charging from your 7 kilowatt home wall box, then you're probably looking at around about 8 hours to go from flat to full. But the car also comes with an onboard 11 kilowatt charger as standard, and you also get a heat pump as standard too. So that's quite a big boon for Jeep. Now, we'll speak a little bit about the driving modes once we're sort of like more out on the open road. But for just now, let's have a little chat about what the car is about. So you've got at the moment, a single motor mounted on the front wheels, which produces the equivalent of just over 150 horsepower. And that will see the Avenger go from 0 to 60 in around about 9 seconds. So it's fair to say you're not going to be buying the Avenger to go quickly. However, it's not really about that. Now, if you want a dual motor version, there's one's going to come out. They're going to do a 4xe, which will have a motor mounted on the rear, and that's coming out probably in about a year or so's time. But for the now, it's just this single motor car. Now, as I say, it's not all about going fast. That's not what Jeeps are about. They never have been, never will be. It's about being practical. It's about being easy to live with, about being easy to drive, that kind of sort of like chunky kind of sort of like, you know, sort of like styling. You can see the sort of like extremities of the car, you know, the boxy, and they're just easy to place on the road, which is exactly what the Avenger is. I'm just waiting on these gates opening now. The first things first is the driving position is, as I said when I was doing the interior of the car, is really, really nice. It's this nice straight ahead. The only thing I will sort of like say is there's no tilt adjustment on the seat. There is height adjustment, but not a tilt adjustment. So that's one thing that I always quite like on a car, is being able to kind of put my bum down and my, sort of like my knees up a little bit. However, can't have everything. Right, how does it feel now sort of getting it up onto the open road? All right, so the default driving mode, if you like, is normal. So there's the 3 settings that you would normally expect from these cars: Eco, Normal and Sport. And with the Stellantis group cars, what that tends to do is it limits the power. So when you're in Eco mode, when it dulls everything down, you're trying to get out the best range for the car's producing around about 90 horsepower. So it limits the motor's power. When you go into normal mode, like I'm in now, it's around about 109 horsepower, something like that. And then you go into sport, where you get the full 156 brake horsepower out of the car. But as I say, it's not necessarily about going quick. The only thing I will say is, where we are today, we're on a relatively kind of flat roads. And I'd probably think it probably feels a little, if you were going up and down undulations, or you're going, you know, through mountainous kind of regions, or a hillier route than perhaps this, maybe you might want more of that sort of like power delivery. that more power and torque available all the time, perhaps. That's the only thing I will say. Maybe you would feel a little bit, you put your foot down there at 56 miles an hour, it doesn't exactly push you forward like you maybe would expect an electric car to. So there are certain circumstances where a little bit extra power would maybe be welcome in that normal mode. It certainly feels very, as I say, easy to place on the road. You know, it doesn't feel a big car. As having driven sort of like 2 hours in my Grand Cherokee, you know, you do notice the more compact dimensions of this car, but not to the point where it feels too small. You feel intimidated by other road users, because you don't. Part, you know, again, of what the design of the Jeep was to elevate sort of like the driver up to what you would expect to be in an SUV, and that's what it has here. You know, you do feel like you are driving a small SUV. There's no getting away from that. The H point, the hip point, is high up. It's nice. I like it. I like the fact that you do, you know, there's a Skoda Octavia in front of me, and you certainly do, you're almost kind of looking across the roof of it. So you do get that feeling of the elevated driving position that most people buy SUVs for. But what I've really taken away from my time with the Avenger is this. It's the size. It feels, and I said it at the beginning, it's that kind of socially responsible attitude. You know, I know, I'm aware of the fact, you know, I don't take my big Grand Cherokee into London. I just don't drive it into the city centre for obvious reasons. A, I don't need to, but B, I am aware of the fact of the kind of image that does portray to people. You're driving this hulking great big 2-ton, you know, SUV through the middle of a city. It's not needed. This is what's needed. I could see this being a second car to our big Grand Cherokee for when we want to do the big trips. You know, you want to go down to Cornwall, you're stuffing it, or up to Scotland, or through France like we've just come back from, with, you know, the roof box piled high and the back stuck and all the bikes on the back. That's great for that. For all the other times when I'm just going around locally, this is the size of Jeep that I would really like. I really like this. This is a nice size. It's a nice compact size. Let me talk about the 3 other driving modes that there are in the car, because, as I said, although it is front wheel drive, it's still a Jeep, and therefore it still has to perform like a Jeep. So they have inbuilt 3, I'll call them off-road modes, but that's me saying that, not Jeep. That's not what Jeep call them, okay? So down here, you've got Sport. As I say, you go down through your driving modes: Sport, Eco, Sport, Normal, Eco, and then you've got 3: Sand, Mud and Snow. Alright, and they will do different things, obviously, depending on the surface that you're on. So if you're on, let's say, sand, so for instance when I'm down in Cornwall, if you drive onto like maybe some of the car parks are on the beaches, you've got that kind of loose surface. You know, you want a little bit of wheel slip just to get the wheels rotating and to get you off the surface. That's where you've got the sand mode for, so that's ideal. Mud, what that basically does is that transfers torque, so it allows a wheel to spin freely whilst transferring torque to the wheel that's got the most grip. So that allows you to get through, so like, so you see a muddy field, or you know, if you're going like off the beaten track, maybe down through one of those forest tracks, that's what you've got there. And then the last one, Snow. Now that's an interesting one, because depending what the surface is when it's in snow will depend on how the car reacts. So for instance, when you're trying to get out of deep snow, what you want is like sand, you want a relative bit of wheel spin, so you can actually get some traction, you can get the momentum moving. Whereas if it's slipping on, say for instance, ice, you want to reel back on that. So that's the kind of clever one, which will sort of like detect what kind of surface the car's actually on, and will then determine what, you know, what it needs to do with the power. So that's the 3 extra modes that you get on the car. And this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. You know, whilst it shares an awful lot of componentry within the Stellantis group, 60% of the Avenger is unique to Jeep. You know, all those componentry, they've tuned it to be a Jeep, and that is hugely important, because whilst maybe Jeep doesn't have a huge following maybe in the UK, or as maybe big as it does in other parts of the world, obviously certainly America, they know what the brand stands for. People know when they see the Jeep brand what it stands for, and seeing a Jeep stuck is not what the brand is about. So there we go. Interestingly, as I was saying earlier, they're not selling this car in the US. This is a European-only car, so it was designed in the UK. Designed for Europe, engineered in Europe, and it's built in Europe. It's built in a Polish plant. So I think that's quite an interesting sort of thing. So it's a proper European car, and it feels right. I keep coming back to this. You know, for this age, this day and age, it feels like it's the right size of car for people that they think they want the SUV kind of lifestyle, but don't want to be seen to be driving a great big hulking, you know, Land Rover Discovery, or, you know, a Range Rover Sport, or even Range Rover Evoque even. I think this makes an awful lot of sense, this car. I really do. And it's a shame that we are just driving it on roads today, because I'd love to have done a little bit of off-roading with it, just to see what it's like, you know, when you go off the beaten track, like I've done with mine. But from here on the road, you can tell there's the proper Jeep heritage in here. It feels like I am driving a proper Jeep, and I like that. Now, brake regeneration. It's the same as you get with the Stellantis group cars. You've got, when you're in drive, you've got a further mode there. You press the D button again, you go into B mode, and that's when you lift off, and you get that. It's not one pedal driving, it's not as strong as that, but it will slow the car right up, so that's good. Handy if you're out on the kind of open road and you're approaching a bend, you just can lift off. It's like a bit of engine braking almost that you get, and enough to sort of like see you through. So you can have that mode there, or you can take it off, let the car coast, and you do the braking yourself by moving across the brake pedal. Now, Stellantis group cars have never had a particularly great brake feel. If you're a regular viewer of AutoEV, you'll know that I've never been a big lover of their actual braking system. So there's nothing behind me. Let me see how I got on with this one. That's a massive improvement. You don't have that deadness at the top of the pedal. I've always found with the Stellantis group cars, as you kind of almost push through a deadness before the actual thing starts, before the brakes start to bite. You don't have it here. That's interesting. Now, I've got the new E2008 in a few weeks' time. It'll be interesting to see if that's changed as well, because remember, this is the first Stellantis product on this new platform, so it'll be interesting to see if they've done something with the brakes on that Peugeot. That's good. I like that. I like the fact that they haven't kept that horrible wooden pedal feel. That's good. I like it. The steering's light. I'm in the sport mode now, but the steering is light. You know, there's a bit of vagueness on the dead ahead. Once you go past something like that, you can then start to feel the kind of wheels turn. So there's a little bit of catch up in the steering wheel, but it's light enough, I would think, in terms of, again, where they're talking about this kind of urban living with this kind of Jeep, where, you know, sort of like manoeuvrability will be very good. I can see that. I'm not got a chance to try it today because I'm obviously out in the middle of the countryside, but as I say, the vagueness that you get out here, I think, will transfer to being a really nice steering system when you're in the built-up environment, you know, making the car very kind of easy just to sort of like manoeuvre around. And as I said, the kind of boxy shape of it, that styling of Jeep, means that you can really see the extremities. You know, you get a nice clear view at the base of the windscreen. I can see the corners of the bonnet. I turn over, I can see the back of the car, and I know that's the back of the car because that's how the styling is, that kind of two-box shape that they've styled, and you can tell that that is the back of the car. To aid with that, on the Summit model, you do get a reversing camera where kind of drone view is standard. It's optional, I think, on the other two models, but obviously you still get your parking sensors as you would expect, so that's good. In terms of performance, when you're in the sport mode, yeah, it does sharpen things up, and you do feel that there is a little bit more power, but as I say, you've got to be in that kind of sport mode before that kind of really happens. So a little bit more power in the kind of normal mode would be welcome, I would suggest, but there you go. So on the whole, what do I think? Well, I think it drives very, very well. I think they have done what they've set out to do, which is kind of engineer a Jeep that's fit for sort of like city and urban living. I know that sounds like a kind of marketing spiel, and I appreciate as well that I'm a Jeep owner, so maybe you're thinking, well, I'm going to be a little bit biased. I'm not, because if the car was rubbish, I'd tell you it's rubbish. You know me, that's the way that I speak. I speak as a finder on AutoEV. It's not perfect. It certainly isn't perfect. But what it is a very good little car. It's, I think, as I keep coming back to, I think it's the right car for this age, for this time, this world that we live in right now. I think it's exactly, if you want an SUV and you want to go electric, I think this is a kind of socially responsible type of car that I think is the right thing for, and it's certainly the right thing I think for Jeep to have done. I think this is a real standout product. Now, a lot of that is to do with the way the car looks. And I will be open and honest about that. I love the way this thing looks. I think it looks like a proper little chunky monkey. And I love cars that have got like a kind of style to them, that have got like a kind of, you know, they mean that they're fit for purpose. And because it looks like that, it should be fit for that purpose. And I know that it will be, because it's got that badge on it, it's got Jeep on it. It won't be a pile of rubbish if you decide to take it down a forest track to take your dog for a walk, or you're into sort of like off-road mountain, you know, you take your mountain bikes down a kind of forest track or something. This will do it. This will do exactly what you need it to do. Is it a car that, you know, that's going to go straight to the top of the class? Probably not. But it is good. It is very good. And it needs to be applauded, the fact that a brand like Jeep have given us a car like this. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, pricing for the Avenger. It's not bad, it's okay. The range starts with the Longitude model at £35,700 in the UK. And then you move up to the Altitude, which is just under £37,500. The range topping Summit tops the range out, literally, at £39,700. So again, it's all right, but you can add options, as I said earlier, so you don't have to upgrade to the next model up to get a certain particular option. There are certain packs that are available to add on to, sort of like if you just wanted the base lead-in model, but you wanted a couple of the options, you can do that. The other thing you'll be able to do with the Jeep is obviously you'll be able to personalise it quite a lot, because Jeep customers tend to want to do things, so there'll be a huge amount of accessories and personalisation things that you can also do to the Jeep. So that kind of adds into the kind of fun of owning one of these little cars. Now, in terms of warranty, it's a 3-year warranty as standard that you get with the car, which, again, given some of the competition that's out there at the moment, maybe should be a little bit better. But of course, you get your usual 8-year warranty on the battery, so you've got peace of mind there with that. Now, there's no shortage of competition for the Avenger now that it's hit the market space, and a lot of it comes from within its own Stellantis group. Peugeot, the new E2008, that's just had a big revision, and we're going to be driving that car over the next few weeks. Vauxhall obviously have the Mach-E, and Fiat are just about to launch the 600e, a car which also sits on this new eCMP2 platform. So they say it's going to have a tough time from within its own company. But of course, there's other brands in this market space, and they're thick and fast. From the Chinese, obviously, we've got the BYD Atto 3 and MG's excellent ZS. And then from the Koreans, the Hyundai group, you've got the new Kona, and of course, the Kia e-Niro. So, you know, as I say, it's not having an easy time of it. The other car that's just come to market is, and it has impressed us a huge amount, and in terms of sitting in price-wise, where this car really sort of like sits, is the new Smart #1. And again, if you're looking at that car, then you've also got to consider, from its sister brand, Volvo, the new EX30 when it comes out. So yeah, it's not going to have an easy time of it, the little Avenger. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Jeep Avenger. What we like, its styling. Its practicality and sensible use of space in the front cabin. There's a reasonably good level of equipment. Its size feels just right for urban use. And it still retains all the brand attributes that you'd expect from a Jeep. We don't like. Well, it can feel a little underpowered at times. There's a surprising lack of sustainability message from the company. The lack of storage in the rear of the car does tend to limit it as a sort of like practical family car. And some of the interior plastics up front, we feel, could be a little bit better. And on top of that, the warranty package now doesn't feel as comprehensive as some of its main rivals. Despite increased sales and despite a real surgence in the brand in the likes of markets such as Italy, in the UK, the Jeep has failed to get the sort of attention that maybe in some respects it deserves. Now maybe that's down to our love of Land Rover and the green oval, but more so, if I'm being blunt about it, I think it's due to the fact that new models haven't been along that often, and when they do come out, they don't exactly shoot straight to the top of the class. But I think that's about to change with this car. You see, it's got everything that us SUV lovers love about an SUV. It's got chunky styling, it's got enough off-road ability that anyone bar Bear Grylls is ever going to need, and it's all done in a socially responsible way. It's the right size of car for the right moment in time in this world. Does it shoot straight to the top of the class? No, probably not. But it's a very good car, but more importantly, it's a really good Jeep. Thank you once again for watching AutoEV. As always, please remember to make sure you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, press the little bell button down below so you receive notification when our next video is uploaded and goes live. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave me your comments down below. What do you think of the new Jeep Avenger? Have you got one on order? Is it a car that would make you interested in the brand? As always, let me know down below. Now remember, we're also across all social media platforms, so Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and of course TikTok, so please give us a follow there as well, because that helps us too. And if this has just whetted your appetite and you're desperate for even more car reviews from the electric car world, then stick on the YouTube channel, because there's well over 160 videos now, not just road test reviews, twin tests, used car buying advice, van reviews, motorbikes, and of course our electric icon series. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching, and thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.